Over the nearly 20 years or almost 2 decades of Masterpiece Transformers, we've seen a lot of good figures, we've seen some bad figures, but today I want to talk about my favorite figures. I'm sure some of you would agree with me, some would disagree. Of course, put that in the comments and all the likes and subscribes and all of that. But we're going to get into my list, my top 10 of my favorite figures coming up. First up on the list is MP44, and he's going to be the only Prime on the list. But there's nothing wrong with MP10, nothing really wrong with the Transform Element, or there's nothing wrong with the Magic Square. But I like the MP44 stylization better. I think he looks more like he walked right out of the screen, and he does look good. He's kind of low on the list for a couple of reasons. He does sort of break down in the back of the alt mode. The alt mode is not the cleanest alt mode of all these Primes out there, but I don't store them in alt mode so much. And the fact that now you can get a KO of them kind of alleviates one of the bigger problems, the huge price point. Now you can get a KO for about 100, but it does still sort of lack that finish that puts that little bit of an edge on that Optimus Prime and that great looking walk out of the cartoon style. Number 9 on my list is going to be the MMC cassettes. I'm going to throw them all on there, but let's narrow it down to Ravage, because out of the cassettes, Ravage is my favorite. He is my favorite, you could say, character out of all of them, but this is one really awesome looking Ravage, and he's big. Now, these are too big. They're a bit oversized. They're too big, but they look really good, and when you make them that big, you could do a lot more with them, and they don't have to fit in anybody's chest and all that stuff, so I do like them. There is still a need for the Takara and the KFC versions, but these, I really like them. I do like what MMC is doing, and I hope they continue the trend and they finish out the Autobots, give us more Decepticons. I don't think there's too many that they can make. Number 8 on my list is Prowl. The Takara version of Prowl, I actually think it's a very good representation. It's a relatively simplistic transformation. It hits all of the points. There's really no reason to upgrade it. In fact, of the pluses, it was the plus that I felt was one of the better upgrades. I do think that they vastly improved the aesthetic of Wheeljack, but for this one, it was really worth getting this one also for a plus, in my opinion. I do have both, and I think that it is a great figure. I really don't think we'll see another Prowl come along, and if they do, would it be even better? Would Fans Toys make a better one? A lot of people would say yes, but what would they do different to make it even better? The alt mode is spot on, and of course I'm not going to go into saying, well, I like the Smokescreen and all these other ones. They're relatively the same. They're the same mold. Smokescreen has the most difference in the tooling, but the rest of them really do share almost exactly the same mold. But it looks good, it's right on with what it should be, and Takara did some of their best work with this figure. Number 7 on my list is the X-Transbots Neptune. Now, I liked it when it came out, and when the Fans Toys version dropped, I already said, well, you know, Neptune's good, but after handling the Fans Toys one, it's not bad. It's a good figure. The Fans Toys one is good, but after having both, handling both, time with them, I realized I do like Neptune better still to this day. A Neptune, there's something about him. He looks good. I like the proportions, the transformation's good. He looks good in both modes. So the metallic paint on this pops. It's even more of a metallic paint than what was on the Fans Toys. You'd expect to see a metallic, shinier finish on Fans Toys, but no, we got it with the X-Transbots. So here's the alt mode, and it does look good. It just really looks like it should be a bigger figure than it is. Like, when you look at it, you think, man, this thing should be massive. It makes a massive boat look big, but it's really a small kind of a boat. And it comes with a ton of accessories. I would say it's overkill in the accessory department. We don't really need that much, but it is kind of fun because you can incorporate the Bumblebee on there and skiing, and it's a lot of cool stuff. You can make it look like it's really splashing through water, but how many people are really going to use it? It's still cool they included it. Number 6 is a bit of a controversial one. This is the MMC Azalea, and I like her. I didn't think I would. When I first bought this figure, I got it just because I've got so many RCs. Why not? It's a good price. I think she was like $73 or something when she came out. I think now she's like close to 100, but when I bought her, she was like 70 something. And she looks good. She doesn't look super hyper G1, super hyper tuned. She looks a little bit of, I guess, on the maybe IDW Studio Ox design. But here's the thing. She looks good in both modes, transforms relatively well. And let's get into comparisons. Since I have all these, I gotta say they all have something good going for them, although people say Toy World doesn't. But when you look at all of them, RC is the best overall action figure. The one that Takara put out looks a lot closer to G1, but has a massive, massive backpack. There are a couple things that are just a little unforgivable on that figure that you don't deal with on Azalea, so I think she might be winning here. The alt mode isn't super G1. I don't really see her in alt mode, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm not transforming her that much. So with that, the Takara one, if I wanted in alt mode, would probably be the better choice. And they're both pretty simple transformations overall. And yes, Takara might win. That does win in the alt mode. But still, it's not that big of a deal, and I think Azalea is the best overall well-rounded figure. I just have a lot of fun with her. Always remember, when you like what you like what you like, right? This is number 5. We're getting into Zeta Superion. Now, only really in combined mode. I really don't want to mess with any of the other modes. I don't want to take it apart at all. But when I look at my Zeta Superion, I think that is everything I want in a Superion. And it's got a pretty good heft to it. It stands really well, and I know people in the comments have said that they have, some of theirs have broken, they've had some issues with breakage. Mileage will vary. There's always going to be a 1.5% breakage or something going wrong with these, in the manufacturing process, but for the most part, mine is solid. I'm happy with it. I don't have any issues with it in combined mode. So the bot modes aren't that great, and I think a lot of this, if you think about it, the bot modes are made to be simplistic transformation designs. The end goal is the combined mode, and that's it. That's all there is to it. The Silverbolt is actually pretty good. It's not a bad looking Silverbolt at all, so I think that's where it really shines. But the other ones, they leave a little bit to be desired. And the alt modes are fine. These are the clear alt modes, same alt modes. Looks good, it's fine. Still, I like it. For combined, it's one of my favorites, and of course I'm a Superion fan. So number 4 on my list is another Superion character, go figure. It is Iceman, and I want to say that I actually like Iceman more than any of the other ones because he is true, or more true, to the original G1 with the little airplane on his back. I have to admit that the Goose itself, Goose is good, but Goose's backpack is a mess. It is not true to the G1, and it does not look like a mini airplane on his back, so that's a big letdown. But I like the color scheme and the color breakup and the aesthetic of Goose a lot more from the front on, but that backpack just doesn't work right, and that is a key part of any aerial bot. The alt mode is fine, and the transformation is relatively simplistic and intuitive. And this is the one that did have that bar for the back piece. You can't really get away from that. That's part of it, and working around the bar that holds the back rear end on it, that is something that you're going to have to deal with. And once you get through that, that's really the only hard part of the transformation. It's relatively simple and intuitive. So number 3 on my list is Fans Toys Phoenix, and a lot of this has to do with the fact that I do like the character. I like Jetfire as the G1 figure, was one of my favorites. I still have my childhood one, mint in the box, and took good care of it. Only transformed it like 3 times my whole life. I think that is one of the best ones that they made, and yes, I know it's Macross and Robotech or whatever. Skyfire is the on-screen representation of what mismatched all these decades, so we finally kind of get that. We've gotten that in the past too. This isn't the first one, but it is the best one, and we're wondering, could Takara even beat it? Who knows? But here's a nice little picture of all of them side by side. Kronos isn't bad, and I still have the DACA Toys Kronos, and if you don't have Phoenix and you have DACA Toys Kronos and it's in your display, it's still going to look fine. Everyone's going to know it's Skyfire, but I think that Fans Toys did a great job with this, and I like it, and I especially like the X version. Number 2 on my favorite Masterpiece Transformers, it is Soundwave from Takara, and more specifically, I've got the Toys R Us release one because that one was the cheapest and easiest and came with all the cassettes. So I think this figure looks good. Now there are some imperfections. It's almost a decade-old design. It's showing its age, but as for being a decade-old design that's showing its age, it still looks good on a shelf. It still looks good in so many Masterpiece displays. Is there another Masterpiece Soundwave out there? Not that I know of, and when Fans Toys finally gets around to making theirs, it may be better and may replace it, but as today, as it stands, this is still one of my favorites, and it's number 2 on my list. I also thought, for the time, the engineering behind the cassettes was pretty awesome. The fact that you actually had the weapons engineered into the birds and into the Ravage. I mean, you really couldn't quite do it in the bots with the Rumble and Frenzy. But with this, it was really good for the time. It's still pretty good today, and it holds up as one of my favorites. Before I get into my number 1, I do want to do some honorable mentions. And the honorable mention, number 1, is going to be Bad Cube's Grump, and it's coming for a reissue too. Now, this is an aged mold, and it is showing its age, but it's still the best one out there. And they really went all out to make some of the best mini-bots around, and for the time, this thing really blew out of the park. Now, I know there'll probably be a better one coming along, which is really why it's not on the list, and it does show its age, but it looks great in your display, and really the best option out there for at least 2 more years. Fans Toys Swoop, and the Giga Power Swoop also, but Fans Toys Soar is another one, and it's one of the characters I like a lot, and it almost made the list, so I want to give it a shout out because it is a great figure. Fans Toys did a good job with it, the tune accuracy, and this one really is a very early figure, so that definitely deserves a shout out for being an early figure and still looking so great, still holding up relatively well. The last honorable mention goes to Mate Toys and their Headmasters, and they didn't quite make the list. There's a couple of reasons. I am starting to think they're not going to finish the set, which they really do need to. They are actual true Masterpiece scale. No one else is making these characters in a Masterpiece scale. Maybe we will see it eventually one day, but these are the only ones that made it, the only ones available, and they're not bad. They're not the greatest in the world, which is really why they're not on my list, but I'm giving them an honorable mention because they deserve it. And number 1 on my list is Fans Toys FT29 or the 2019. Either one, they are both great. Quietus is a good figure. And to be number 1 on my list, and Cyclonus never was one of my favorite characters all these years. But once Fans Toys made this figure, I put it on my shelf, incorporated it into a display. It catches my eye, attracts my eye, it turns into a focal point every time I look in that display because he looks that good and he's that awesome of a figure. In fact, he is so good looking of a figure that I like the character more now because they made this figure. It's one that really doesn't make sense. They've recently reissued it, and I'm glad that they put more of them out so more people can enjoy this. I really kind of wished I would have bought an extra of the T version back when they were only $160, but nowadays you can get them around $300. He's a great figure, worth it, looks awesome, looks amazing, and makes me hope that Fans Toys continues to push out figures like this. I've gone on record saying that some of the engineering is really similar to X-Transbots, and it is. But one thing that really shocks me about this is how they made it so slim. They use the same techniques, but it is ridiculously thin in both modes, and that's magic right there. So who would you have on your list of favorite figures? They don't even have to be good figures. You could just like them because of the character. I'd like to know in the comments below, how many of these do you have? How many of these do you like the most? And how many of these would be your second option as a character? I'd like to know. Like, subscribe. Titanium Hanger out.